The Veterans Cemetery at Port Lincoln it's been difficult financially for the local RSL to maintain it on its limited budget. And you might remember that last year the RSL launched a GoFundMe to try to raise some of the money that was needed to keep it going. And then a state government grant of $75,000 over 3 years came through. One Nation representative in South Australia's Upper House, Sarah Game, pushed for funding for the cemetery and has just had a look at the work that is being done. Sarah Game, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Narelle.
Nice to be speaking with you. So, what is the story out there at the Garden of Remembrance? Is work happening?
Well, absolutely. I mean, a lot of work is happening. It was a real privilege to be shown around recently. I've been to Port Lincoln a number of times, but went recently down on the weekend and got a visit from the president of the Port Lincoln RSL there, tour rather, and saw there's been works on the irrigation system. There's been updated footpaths so that the elderly visitors can walk safely, and also disability access. There's been fencing, some more planting. They're working on a shaded area because it can become very hot. And obviously you need a place where people can reflect and remember those that we've lost. And so it was really beautiful, actually. But one of the most wonderful things about this entire experience, actually, has been seeing firsthand how deeply moved people are when you do pull together to secure a garden like this. I mean, I was speaking with Gary, the president. He said they're getting up to 30 visitors a day. Everybody is interested, whether it be people from cruise ships who've come into Port Lincoln, whether it be locals, people who've got family members there, or what really moves me is the increased educational aspect that they're able to provide now. So school children coming and learning about those who fought for our freedom.
And why in particular, Sarah, was it important to you to secure funding for the Veterans Cemetery?
Well, look, a number of reasons. I mean, I think the One Nation Party has always had a particular interest and respect for veterans who fought for Australia to be the place that it is now. And so certainly our party, this has always been a top priority. My dad also was in the Navy for about 20 years, so I do have some direct experience. But also I'd been to Port Lincoln before, I'd seen the Remembrance Garden before, and so when I read the story about the funding being cut, I knew that that was something that I directly wanted to advocate for.
Sarah Game is One Nation's representative in South Australia's Upper House. So how did you become aware of the plight of the RSL in trying to maintain the Garden of Remembrance, Sarah?
Well, look, it was through the media, Narelle, that I became aware of their plight, and it had been federal funding that was cut, and so I guess there was potentially an unease about the state government actually stepping in, but they did step in with the $75,000 grant. Obviously, the important question is also that the money continue to get maintained for this garden and provided for this garden once that money runs out. And so that's something I've got another 5 years left of my term, so I'll be keeping a close eye on the garden and making sure that that's at the top of my priority list.
Let's bring Gary Clough in on the conversation. He is the president of the Port Lincoln RSL, so they're trying to keep this Garden of Remembrance maintained. Gary, tell us the background to Port Lincoln's Garden of Remembrance.
Well, good afternoon, Narelle. Hello, good to talk to you again, Sarah. The Garden of Remembrance was really, from what we can ascertain, established pretty much on a handshake back in 1929, and the first interment was back in 1930. So of course, it's been maintained as part of the RSL's ethos ever since. So we've maintained and administered that area. It was understood for a long time to be owned by the RSL, but somewhere along the line things changed and you can't prove what happened on a handshake, so it's now been allocated as Crown land, Council Reserve, and in brackets after that the subcategory cemetery. So in doing that, the easiest thing to do for us was to talk to the council, and we've now firmed out effectively a 42-year lease so that we still totally maintain and administer the RSL's cemetery there. From what I understand, originally they said there were 4 of these in Australia. One of those that they thought has been proven not to be. So as far as we know, we're definitely the only cemetery administered and controlled by an RSL in South Australia. and at the max, we're one of 3 in Australia, but I'm not sure where the others are.
Gary, and I believe it's the final resting place for 550 veterans and their spouses.
Yeah, we're just interred now. There's about 600 interred. And then, of course, we also have the ashes in the niche wall, the rose garden. So, yeah, it's a fair undertaking. There are a lot of ex-serving members there, and there's a lot of history there.
Yeah.
A lot of families, a lot of facts and a lot of love.
Gary, how tough is it for the RSL sub-branch to look after it financially? I was reading an article from a few years ago that said, the total income for the RSL back in 23, it was, shy of $143,000, including $50,000 from the government, and the expenses were just over $150,000. So you're in a deficit of about $8,000 each year. So that must make it really difficult to keep these sorts of assets going, Gary.
Yeah, well, I must admit, I took over in, January 2022, and things had to change a little bit here and there. So COVID put an interruption into everything, and we're still having problems, as every charitable organisation is, with volunteers. The people we have are ageing, I'm fortunate another couple have come on board. They're about my age, so they're in their 60s. So, that's probably the youth of the RSL at the moment as far as the volunteers go on the committee, etc. But, we've turned it around a fair bit because we've managed to re-engage with the community across a whole myriad of schemes. And, of course, RSL headquarters has got behind us as well and got behind veterans full stop. Because I know they went through a horrible period there for a while where they were fighting to survive themselves.
Yeah.
But there's been an attitude change there, and we're now back, and we are back well and truly doing what we're supposed to do, which is look after veterans, and in our case, preserving the memory. But unlike a lot of RSLs, this was built by returned servicemen back in 1953. So we own the building. And we've administered the cemetery ever since that time. So a lot of RSLs pay a peppercorn rent to a council, and they have a little plot in the council cemeteries. But whereas we have to administer and maintain the whole lot, the building, our facilities, and also the garden. So
that's a lot of work. Yeah, so you need to pay people to come in and do that. Is $25,000 a year enough to maintain the Garden of Remembrance?
At this stage, well, the $25,000 a year we're using to catch up on the maintenance that just had to disappear, but it wasn't done over all those years, really, because the funding wasn't there. The simple thing was we initially asked to kind of upgrade the irrigation. When we got the first quote through, it was $96,000 with a few more thousand to get added on. So, of course, the $75,000 was never going to cut that, especially coming over a 3-year period. We needed that money up front. So we've done what we can and repaired and improved where we can within that funding. But the $75,000, as I said, we've really earmarked for projects. Yeah. It's standard, different tranches, the different programs over the 3 years of the funding. So we can bring it up to a standard that hopefully we can maintain and will be presentable come 2030 for the 100th year anniversary.
100th year anniversary in 2030. Yeah, boy, that'll be upon us before we know what's hit us, won't it? Gary, thank you. Gary Clough there, the president of the Port Lincoln RSL. I just want to return to Sarah Game, who is the One Nation member for the Upper House in South Australia. So, Sarah, I know you said this is on your radar for the future. What will happen in 2027 when the current funding ends, do you think?
Well, exactly. That's very interesting. I'm going to keep a very close relationship. I mean, Gary and I get on very well, and we communicate on and off in between my visits to Port Lincoln. So he keeps me well updated with all the progress there. And so certainly as that date approaches, I'll be looking to ensure that we've got funding going ahead.
Good on you, Sarah. Thank you. Good to speak with you. One Nation member for the Upper House of South Australia.